Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, Off The Underside. How we all doing? Today we've got another brilliant guest, very excited about this one. It's a man who's played on both sides of the Atlantic. He's got loads of experience playing and coaching. Mr. Colin Miller, how you doing, pal?
Great, Jamie. Thanks for having me on the show with the guys here. I'm thrilled to bits to be a part of it.
No bother at all, mate. Like I say, it's our pleasure. You're really excited to talk to you, Colin. You played some big clubs. Obviously, you've represented Canada many, many times. So thanks very much for coming on. We'll go back to the very start, Colin. You were actually born in Scotland. What's your earliest memories? Obviously, you were born here and then you moved to Canada quite young.
Yeah, my family, we grew up in a small mining village called Allenton, just outside of Shotts. And we were there. I was 10 when my family emigrated. There was my mum and dad and my brother Dal, two younger sisters, emigrated in 1975 back to Vancouver. And we've been here since then. My time growing up, it was my footballing time at that time was like most youngsters was through primary school, and it was Allenton Primary that I played for. And that was my first real, when I compare the upbringing of what I had in Scotland at that time as a youngster to what the football world was like. I was getting older, obviously. I was when we came back to Canada, my brother and I, that was the first organised football really was in primary school. And then when we got out to Vancouver, then it became far more structured. You become part of a club, if you like, and things snowballed from there. But yeah, some great memories in Scotland. My dad took us to Ibrox, or my brother and I think it was our first game was against Falkirk many moons ago. And I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast, guys, but I can tell you that I was at Ibrox that day. But it was great. We had, it was my dad was a coal miner. My mum worked at the Heartwood Mental Hospital as a nurse, and that was traditionally what the people did in the area. Very hard working class background, and I think it stood me and my family, to be honest with you, in good stead moving forward.
See, moving countries at such a young age, did you ever feel torn between your Scottish roots and your Canadian future in life and also in football?
It's a good question, Corey. I was my first day. We originally moved. I know I said Vancouver. We landed in Vancouver, and then we went to a place called Prince George, which is about 500 miles north of Vancouver. So fair to say that it's a wee bit chilly up there. A wee bit chilly. So there was a lot of snow on the ground. My first day at school. You could imagine my brother and I, there weren't many Scottish accents going about in Prince George at that time. So as usual, there's always some loudmouth that thinks they run the show at that. So anyway, for some reason I got picked on and I said, okay, out the back of the school after, and here was a new guy, first day at school. And thankfully I punched his lights in, there was blood all and all that stuff. And then I had to get called into the principal's room. My mum and dad, first day at school. What's going on here? But I never got any hassle after that, I have to say, Corey. But it was difficult. It's still difficult. I had 2 international caps for Canada playing against. In fact, my first A cap for the national team was against Scotland in Toronto. And I actually changed jerseys with Gordon Strachan after that game. We lost 2-0 at Varsity Stadium. And then I played against them later on. Andy Roxburgh and Craig Brown were in charge at that time, and I swapped jerseys with my old teammate Ali McCoist. So I've got 2 ex-Old Firm managers Scotland jerseys in the house.
2 different sizes as well. Must be Gordon Strachan's.
Yeah. That's why I went for it, first of all. So
did you leave a bet on anybody?
Well, I actually had a good tussle with Gordon Dury, of all people. He was chirping away a wee bit, and I slipped. I overcommitted for a tackle inside Scotland's 18-yard box, and he said, "See you," and I chased him all the way up the park, and nothing really happened. But then later on in the game, I did quite well against Gordon as the game progressed. I was playing left back that day, and the big fella was outside right, and all of a sudden his numbers came up, and I said, "Hey, Gordon, yeah," I turned around. See, yeah, he was going off the park at the time. But But it was great, fantastic experience, as you can imagine. Fantastic experience.
Tell us a wee bit about your youth career, Colin. What's the system like over there? Did you realise pretty early that you were going to make a living out of the game?
Well, I wouldn't have said that, Jamie. I was still too young, to be honest with you. But the North American Soccer League was really prevalent at the time. It was really, really big, as you can imagine. And I played for my first youth club. We grew up in East Vancouver, and it was a very British European working class area of Vancouver. And there was a club called Grandview Legion. We played in Kilmarnock strips, to be honest with you, blue and white stripes. And there was a lot of very good Canadian international players came through that system. And what happened, I guess, at the time was a combination of playing for your grassroots club, and school football was quite important as well. So you'd get to what we call the provincials or the provincial championship. It would be a big cup experience for high schools and that. And I basically got drafted out of that system, but getting the chance to play, I had excellent coaches, ex-Whitecaps reserve players, and really good football people. So I was really lucky. You get some kids that go through grassroots football and probably could have been very good players, but they didn't have, the proper coaching or preparation. But I was very lucky that I had good people that were looking after me. And then I remember at 15 years of age, maybe 14 years of age, making a phone call to a gentleman who was a huge influence in my upbringing, football wise, called Alan Errington. Alan was a Geordie, was a great coach, one of the best youth coaches that Canada's ever had, to be honest with you guys. And I phoned him and I said, Alan, I'm playing youth football here at the moment. What do I need to do to get out of this now? And, because it sounds arrogant. I'm not an arrogant person. It was too easy for me. And he said, you have to start playing against men. You have to start playing senior football. Now, I was strong and I was fairly aggressive, even as a kid and all the way through my career. So I could handle it. So he said, you've got to leave youth football and come into the senior men's. And he also said, you're too short, you're too slow, and you're too fat. And I said, it's still an accurate assessment, guys, but he did it to get a rise out of me, to be honest with you, because we knew each other. We'd known each other for years, and he knew what he was going to get. So he was a really, really big influence. That conversation I will never forget. And I kicked on from there. I started to take the game more seriously. I got selected for the BC, British Columbia provincial program for the under-16s when I was 14. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I got invited into some youth camps. We took out our Canadian citizenship in 1982, which then enabled me, obviously, to play for the Canadian youth team. So I was the captain of that team at 17 years of age. But coming through the system in British Columbia at that time, I would have said 80% of the national team players, maybe even 90% of the national team players had come out of British Columbia at that time. It was a really, really big hotbed. I mean, the East Coast, of course, Toronto and Montreal always produced very good players, but there was a real time when British Columbia produced the majority of the players. But the Grandview Legion situation, I left that and I went and played for a club called Langley, Borsato. Langley's a suburb out of Vancouver, probably about half an hour, 45 minutes drive. And out here I was playing with men that go to work during the day. I was going to high school during the day, and then all of a sudden training with them a couple of times a week, and then playing first team football on a Saturday. So it was a fantastic education for me, playing against guys that were bigger, stronger, faster, and it just made me think more about the game, and it certainly helped me as I moved through the age groups and the levels.
See, Dave, looking back now, do you think growing up in two different footballing worlds, the Scottish football world and obviously the Canadian football world, do you think that made you a different type of player to anyone you would see in Canada, like with the aggression and stuff you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, my brother and I, Corey, were well ahead of the average Canadian boy, with the greatest respect, because everything we did in Scotland was football. I mean, every kid in the village played football. We all got for the majority of the folk, we all got a new Rangers strip every Christmas, and we all got a new ball. Nobody wanted to kick the ball when we got it. You know, it was no, we'll use yours. No, we'll use yours. And they were all still in the box and things like that. But we all got new strips, and it was terrific. But it was always at football every day, whether it was at recess in school or after school, things like that. We played football. So all those touches on the ball, it just made us further ahead than the average Canadian player here. So it brought a bit of profile to us. The fact that we had Scottish accents as well brought a bit of attention. My old man had a Scottish accent, as you can imagine. And on the sideline, he wasn't the most polite at times, let's say that. And so the family kind of stood out a wee bit in a good way, not in a terrible way, but we loved the game. My dad was very, very passionate about the game, brought us up in a good way to respect the game and things like that. My brother, still fanatical about his football. We just love the game as well. And Dal, he lives in a village called Hart Hill, and you know, he's been there for years actually. So really, really good family upbringing, and in the game, it's been terrific over the years. Good friends as well that made it, that environment here in Canada, that much better for me. I would never. I'm saying this because you don't know, but where I was at that time, if I compare, would I ever have become a professional football player in Scotland or Canada? At the time, I would never have said I would have been a football player in Scotland because of the quality of the teams and the players coming through. But I was just a young kid. Who knows if I took the two environments, the Canadian environment gave me a better chance, to be honest with you, because I had that head start, and I wasn't. If I was going into a professional club, it wouldn't have been playing catch up at that point, Corey. So hopefully that helps a wee bit.
No, definitely.
We talk about this quite a bit on the show, Colin, with ex-pros and that. So I'm really interested to hear your perspective when you were younger in that. Obviously, in Scotland, I think there was a bit of, as we call it, tough love back in the day for a lot of kids in that. I know that you're being quite positive about your early days in that, but was there any kind of senior pros that were quite hard on you, or kind of, would you know what I'm talking about, basically? You know what I mean? Was there any tough love in Canada?
Yeah, there were. I mean, I was very, very fortunate, guys. I played. I was, as I said earlier, I was drafted by the Toronto Blizzard in the North American Soccer League, and Toronto was a fantastic franchise. We had the likes of Jimmy Nicol playing for us. Connie Carlson was the captain of Sweden. Jan Moller was the goalkeeper for Sweden. Derek Spalding, an ex-Scotland player as well. We had three or four South African boys that were phenomenal players and really good professionals. We had my favourite Canadian player of all time was a guy called Bruce Wilson. He was a grumpiest old bugger, even at an early age, but he was great for me. He gave me some tough loving for sure, in a good way. If you made a mistake, I was playing right back at the time, and Bruce was playing left back, and he got it. He understood the game. He played for the World 11. At one point, Kevin Keegan was the coach of the team. They did a tour for UNICEF all over the world, and Bruce was actually the left back. So he gave me a hard time in the best possible way. He was also the captain of the national team, and gave me a hard time when I was there too. But he did it because he knew what he was going to get from me, and he saw that I was going to be a captain and a coach of the national team one day as well. So it was great. There was never any bullying or anything like that at all that I can recall during my upbringing in the game. It's different here in Canada. I mean, I'm saying now I'm going back to when I was playing. There was tough love. There was people shouting and screaming and so on and so forth. But I've actually been to my nephew's game in Scotland when we came back for a wedding a couple of years ago, and watched it, and some of the behaviour of the parents. Yeah, it's the same thing here in Canada. The difference is at times that the average Scottish person watching the game has got a reasonably good knowledge of the game, whereas in Canada, some of the people shouting have maybe never kicked a football in their life before. They're just shouting for the sake of shouting at times. So we have a very strict policy here. I'm also the technical director of the Abbotsford Soccer Association, which is a grassroots club. And there's about 950 kids that we have, boys and girls, at the club. And there's zero tolerance now, guys. with people abusing referees and getting involved in things like that. It's just that I think the world has gone crazy, to be honest with you, not just in football environments, but and I understand even in Holland where they have signs around where the kids are playing, quiet please. The only voice you hear is maybe the coach speaking. And I'm a big fan of that. I think it'd be a difficult rule to try and pass in Scotland, right enough. But it's everybody's trying to, well, not everyone, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of parents are trying to live their dream through their son or their daughter. And instead of just leaving the kids alone and let them play, because I always say that the game finds your level. The game itself will find your level. If you're good enough, you'll get there. You need to have a wee break now and again, of course, but if you're meant to be a Scottish Premier League player or meant to be a Bees or Holmes League player with the greatest respect, you'll play at those levels. It's as simple as that, because the game itself will find your level.
I was just thinking, Davey, see if it was referees, you can't be shouting and ball and you've been knackered. You'll be like back in women's football.
Mate, see when he said there about the referees, my kids who are under 13s, see his two coaches, they're always shouting at the ref, man. but to be fair to them, sometimes the refs don't see the dirty challenges, and that's what they get onto the referee about, and then he'll just say, like, shut up or I'll abandon the game and stuff like that. And you're like, they're 12 and 13, but they just keep going and going all game, and then they start getting smart with the referee when he does give them decisions and that.
Yeah, it is a problem, David. It's the same problem here. You know, I mean, who would be a referee? I take my hat off to the people that do it. You know, I remember doing a game, a charity game. I got asked, they say, "Wee man, will you come and be a referee in a charity game?" And I did it, and I was nearly fighting a supporter one day because he was abusing me. I'm thinking, here's me giving my time up and all that. I'm trying to help some, trying to do something positive. And this guy's giving me dog's abuse on the sideline. So I can just imagine what it must be like. And it's a shame because without referees, we don't have a game.
Take the boy out of Scotland, but can't get Scotland out of the boy.
Absolutely.
Do you find that as a coach now, the way the things are? Do you find that easier to kind of communicate with the kids and that and other people?
I think it comes with experience, Jamie. I remember I left Hamilton Accies as the manager, which was a shame. I'm sure we'll speak about it a wee bit later. But I came back to this Abbotsford Soccer Association, and I was the only paid member of staff. I'm going back to 2000 now, so I'm going back quite a while here. The club had about 2,000 players in it, boys and girls as well. And I'd never coached a girl in my entire time when I was in Scotland. And it was always, I was a reserve team coach at Hamilton Accies at 23 years of age. I was right into it. I was really, really loved coaching and so on. So when I came back here to Abbotsford, where we live, it's about an hour's drive east of Vancouver. The general manager of the club said, "Okay, wee man, you're going to go and coach this group of girls." And the girls, quite literally, couldn't pass the ball from here to the fridge away. And I'm thinking, what do I do here? And I said, I can't do this. There's no ways I can do this job. I said, this is going to be so frustrating. And to be fair, Barry said, "Listen, wee man, you just have to be patient." And I have to say now, I absolutely love working with the girls and the women's teams. It's great. I think, like anything, once a player develops trust with the coach, it's massive for you. And it made me a better coach, because then I was having to break the game down rather than working with professional players. I had to break the game down more to the grassroots level so that they were going to get better, and it was going to make me a better coach. So after all those years of experience, I've been away from the club. I'm now back as the technical director of the club. I've been away. I'd been at FC Edmonton as a manager and all over the place back in England with Billy Davis and stuff at Derby. But the on-field side of the game doesn't scare me at all. I love it working with the kids and the coaches. I do a lot of coach education, and I don't go, "Oh, geez, I have to go to my work today." But the computer stuff, the admin stuff that's involved in it now, I despise it. I think it drives me crazy. And I'm not in my happy place sitting in front of a laptop, that's for sure.
Hopefully you're all right with us. Well, you touched upon it a wee bit. You broke into senior football with Toronto Blizzard as a teenager. What was that environment like with the North American football just finding its footing?
Yeah, well, I was actually the youngest player to ever play in the North American Soccer League, Corey. At that time, before a player could be signed, he had to be either 18 years of age or his high school class had to have graduated. And I was 17 when my class graduated. So I became the youngest player. I found out I was drafted by the Toronto Blizzard over the PA at high school. The principal, he announced it over the PA, which was pretty neat. But it was the environment at Toronto was first class, was absolutely first class. The manager of the club was a gentleman by the name of Bob Houghton, and Bob was the manager of Malmo when they played against Nottingham Forest many years ago, and he since became the manager of China and India as well. Very, very experienced football guy, but a good football person. And I really, in all honesty, I got my break, I think, in the NASL because at that time, throughout the league, you had to play 3 North Americans. There had to be 3 North Americans on the field at all time. So it gave the local players, or it gave the Canadian players, in my case, an opportunity to play. And I wish we'd do a wee bit more of that at times, to be honest with you. Even back home, I wish I would see a wee bit more of that in the Old Firm, where we could get some Scottish players, because I think it's going to affect the national team at some point in a big way eventually. But it gave me the chance to play. And, you know, you're playing beside Jimmy Nichol and, as I said, these other lads that were fantastic. We even had Roberto Bettiga, who was a Juventus legend, was our centre forward at the time. He actually became the president of Juventus. So you can imagine that environment as a 17-year-old. It was amazing. And, you know, the training facilities, everything that we did was first class. You know, we used to go to Orlando for pre-season. What a nightmare that was, lads, as you can imagine. You know, 3 weeks in Orlando. It was awful. But and I'm going to tell a daft story here, but it was we were, one of our sponsors was Molson, and there was a semi-trailer drove from Toronto down to Orlando full of beer, and they put this beer behind the bar in this big hotel. And if you showed the card, you got a beer. And I'm thinking nowadays, can you imagine that being the case in pre-season? I'll just go down to the bar, show my card, get a couple of 3 or 4 beers. It was amazing. But they did things that were, you know, I'm saying ahead of the game, not necessarily the beer thing, but there was a breakfast laid on for us. There was all sorts of things that it was as expected nowadays when you travel with teams. You know, you get your breakfast, your lunch and dinner all sorted for you for the most part. And but so the Toronto Blizzard was a really good franchise. In fact, when the North American Soccer League folded, there was only the Toronto Blizzard and the Chicago Sting at that time. They were the only 2 teams that had registered again for the North American Soccer League. But what a league that was. It was amazing. I'm 17, 18 years of age, and I'm playing against Franz Beckenbauer, Johan Neeskens for the New York Cosmos. It was an amazing experience. I mean, Roberto Bettiga, he had set up a pre-season tour in Italy, and here I am playing against Inter Milan in the San Siro, playing against Sampdoria with Trevor Francis and Liam Brady, and Juventus. We played against the Juventus side that was full of top internationals, and we drew nothing each with them. 40,000 because Roberto Bettiga was coming back to his home. So as a young player, my goodness, the experiences were unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable.
It's incredible, mate. Brilliant. Obviously, you mentioned earlier that you were a Rangers fan going to Ibrox and stuff, and then your move came about, mate. How did that happen? I know it was under Jock Wallace, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And an interesting story, Jamie. As part of the Toronto Blizzard, Bob Houghton said to me, he said, "Wee man," he said, "I want you to go back to Scotland to your local team, where your local club or your most professional club or biggest club would be." And he said, where would that be? And I said, well, Motherwell would be the nearest one for where we are in Allenton, just one bus and I'm there. And he says, who's the manager there? And I said, it's Jock Wallace. He said, oh, I know Jock Wallace. He said, I'll get in touch with him and I'll set up the pre-season for you. So I came back to Motherwell for a month, believe it or not, Jamie, and I flew in. What a story this is. I flew in from Vancouver to I think it was Prestwick or Glasgow Airport, one of the two, and got picked up, went to my grand's house to stay. I'm 17. In fact, my brother came with me as well that trip. Dal, and so she's got a fry up, mate. She's got the black pudding, haggis, everything that you could imagine. Square sausages on this plate, and of course I hadn't had that for a few years, so I eat everything. And it's a Tuesday morning, and now I've got to get the bus down to Fir Park. So I go in and I'm walking. Now you can imagine the intimidating factor of this. Here's a kid grew up in Scotland, sure, I still had the Scottish accent, but I'm walking into a professional football club, no idea what I'm doing, where I'm going, and all that stuff. And you've got Gary McAllister, Brian McClare, lads like that were playing for Motherwell at the time. So I walk in, and anyway, Frank Connor is the assistant manager, and then I meet the legend that is Jock Wallace as well. So they introduce me, and I get changed and all that. And lo and behold, Tuesday morning is the morning that the lads are going to get battered. They're going to get, there's a wee game of running, as Jimmy Nicholl used to say. And it was on a red ash park. It wasn't exactly like Orlando, Florida weather either, I can say. But it was a wee red ash park in Motherwell, and we start a game of running. So I remember there being a bit of a slope down where the footballs used to roll down the slope, and the lads would go and get it. So I feel things a wee bit churning inside here. I can feel the haggis bumping into the black pudding, and the black pudding going into the square sausage. So I can feel all this going, and then eventually it's going to come up. So I run down this hill, and of course it all comes up. And the big lad, it was Edwaldson, there was a centre back for Celtic, I think, at one point as well. He comes down the hill, and he said, "Are you okay, wee man?" I says, "Yeah, I'm fine." I come back up and I join in with the running. And Big Jock told me after that, he said, if you had dropped out, he said, I won't say the word that he used, you could have went back to Canada. Stuck it out, and I kept going. And I got in and I played a few reserve games for Motherwell. And then Big Jock pulled me in. I was leaving on the Thursday to come back to Canada to start pre-season with Toronto. And Big Jock said, "I want to ask you a question, wee man." I says, "Yeah, sure, Gaffer." He says, "How do you feel about Celtic?" And I says, "Well, I'm like a bull when he sees red," like that. Yeah. He says, and I'm sorry guys, it's just my honesty.
I like it.
But he says,
I don't so much.
But he says, well, he said, if you can get out of your contract on with a blizzard, he says you'll play left back for Motherwell on Saturday against Celtic at Fir Park. And that's what he said. And I said, well, I can't get out of the contract. I was just a kid. I'd very wet behind the ears. I wasn't as streetwise as the average Scottish kid growing up here, growing back home would have been. So I said, we'll keep in touch, Big Jock. And lo and behold, we did keep in touch with him. I'd send him some postcards for Florida and just let him know how warm it was and things like that. But the league folded. Well, we actually played against, the Toronto Blizzard played against Rangers in Hamilton, Ontario. And the Big Jock said the biggest Rangers supporters club in the world is in Toronto. And so there was, I think, 15,000, 18,000 at a crowd that day. We would have had, 4,000 or 5,000, but the majority of the supporters there were Rangers supporters. And Big Jock came in after we beat Rangers 2-0 that night. Ali McCoy still speaks about the goal that one of our players scored against Rangers that night. It was a great goal. But here's me playing against, God rest him, Davy Cooper. Coop was playing outside left, and I was playing right back at the time. I had Jimmy Nicholl in front of me, and he had me well warned about what Coop could do to anybody, never mind this wee fat guy, that's for sure. But and anyway, things went well, and I played well that night. And then Big Jock came into the dressing room as Bob Houghton was having the team talk, and he says, "You make sure you speak to me after the game." And I did. And so long story short, when the league folded, Big Jock was on the phone, and I came back to Rangers. It was the summer of '85, if I remember, and did all the pre-season, and I was up at Gull and Sands, did all of that stuff, the whole kit and caboodle. And we were up north. I'm going to guess and say it was Inverness or something like that. We were going to play against that night for the first pre-season game, and I was scheduled to play left back, and I was having a kip in the afternoon in the room, and the Big Jock knocks on the door, and he says, "Sorry, wee man, you can't play tonight." And I went, "What's up?" He says, "Something called international clearance." So I had been given a form that released me from Toronto so that Rangers could sign me, but it had to be done through the federations. And there was no internet or anything like that that had to be done sort of Pony Express at that time. And I think it was 7 or 8 weeks before I actually got my international clearance before I could play a game for Rangers. I could play inter-squad games, I could do all of that, but I couldn't get into the first team until that happened. So I only eventually played 7 games for Rangers. But as a supporter, still a supporter, although a very frustrated supporter, it was a privilege. It was an honour to play for the club. The players, I'm still in touch with them on a regular basis on a group chat with Rangers in the 80s, the lads, Coisty and Big Slim, and all the guys that were part of that team. We keep in touch with each other on a very regular basis. So I was a very privileged person to be given the opportunity to play for the club that I adored.
It's good that you got on with Jock Wallace. I know that we had Mark Warburton on, and he had him at Leicester, and he said it was just a wee bit too much for him. You know, the kind of, as we mentioned earlier, the tough love. But you enjoyed that then?
I did. Well, it was tough love, Jamie, if you didn't do what was being asked of you. And nowadays, I think maybe a wee bit more of that could be done. At the professional level, you see players rolling, diving, and cheating, and all that sort of stuff. As a manager, I didn't tolerate it when I was in charge of a team. I wouldn't have played you if you were going to dive and cheat and roll about there. And I think it's come too far the other way. And I'm not saying for a second that any manager bullies anybody, but I think a few home truths could be. This is your job. Your job is, if I was as a fullback kept allowing wingers or wide midfield players, whatever they call them, to get crossing into the box, I wouldn't be playing. It was my job to stop the person that I was playing against. That was my job, and I did it, touch wood, almost for 18 years professionally, and it just meant that I was good at what I did. And I wasn't a silky football player by any means, but I knew exactly what the script was. If I didn't do that, I wasn't going to play. And I think I even said that when I was assistant coach of the Vancouver Whitecaps, and we changed manager. We had a terrific Icelandic manager called Teitur Thordarson was the manager. He got sacked. Another guy came in, Tommy Sohn, as the Whitecaps caretaker at the time. And we had lost a few games on the bounce here. And I was standing at the back, and again, I was still the assistant. And I just says, Tommy, can I say something now? The same things have been happening. I said, in my day, and I hate using that because you sound like a dinosaur when you say that, but I said, in my day, if a manager told me something 3 times and I didn't do it, I didn't learn from that 3 times, I said, I would never have played for that same club again. I said, we're telling you the same thing. This is 6 times in a row we've told you the same thing. I said, at some point the penny has to drop. You're professional football players. So that's the sort of standards that I sort of wanted to put across to players in a fair way, not a bullying way, but just listen. It's about wins and losses, guys. It's not about we say let's play silky football. Yeah, the supporters want to see their team win. That's what they want to see.
We've mentioned this before on the podcast. We feel that it seems like the bigger clubs are letting the players kind of run the club. Like if I'm not playing, toys are out the pram, they're in the media and all that stuff. But I'm a wee bit younger than Davey and Jamie, but I can remember that if somebody done anything like that, you're out the door. Like you don't pamper them type of thing. It's you're out the door. That's it.
I mean, at that time, Corey, during my playing career, if a player acted like that on the park, we would have sorted them out in the dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the reality of things, because some of the clubs I played for were fantastic. I mean, the times I had at Hamilton, a brief spell up at St Johnstone and across to the Jambos, and that, there were lads in the dressing rooms that didn't tolerate anything. If somebody was getting a wee bit carried away or whatever, and we did it as well with the national team with Canada. If somebody had scored a hat trick, then we couldn't wait to ring their bell on a Monday, because it was, you're a family. You have to, everybody wins together and gets beat together. And I think I'm generalising now, and I hate to do that too much, but I think the sense of entitlement is quite frightening. You get young boys that have got agents now, and they haven't spent any time in football, and they've all got agents and things. And I just think it's sort of created a bit of a monster for the game itself. There are aspects of the game in those olden times, dare I say, I'd like to see some of those standards brought back in. and just about the discipline that I mentioned before, the respect, all these sorts of things about what it is. I'm not saying they're bad players. I'm not saying they're bad professionals, but that sense of entitlement. You see somebody coming off the park, they're throwing their water bottle, kicking the water bottle. They're not speaking to anybody. That drives me crazy. I mean, Craig Brown, God rest him, was I stayed with Craig for 5 months when I was the assistant first team coach at Derby County in the Premier League. And it was like living with the headmaster. And he said that he said to his national team players, the Scottish national team players, how many reasons can you give for a substitution being made in one of his meetings? And I think the team came up with 22 different reasons why a manager would substitute you. So it's not always, oh, you're awful, you're terrible. You may have shot your bolt, you may have been done, and you may have come off. It's as simple as that. But the manager has got a responsibility to try and win games, and they have to tweak that any way they see it happening.
Absolutely, can't disagree with any of that. What were the biggest culture shocks you noticed at your time with Rangers and Hamilton stuff compared to back in Canada?
Well, I remember asking Bob Houghton, the Toronto Blizzard manager, I remember asking him if you were going to give me one piece of advice when I'm going back to Rangers here now, what would it be? I remember he's had a wonderful football background in coaching and management. He said you have to become the most selfish person in the world, because you're going back there as a Canadian wanting to take someone's job away from them. And nobody back home is going to help you along the lines in terms of the players. So you're going to have to earn the respect of the people that are in the dressing room every day, the coaching staff, the management. I mean, I loved it. I loved my time training with every club. I was so privileged, guys. And I remember at Rangers at the time, Alec Taunton was terrific with me, because I'd stay after training for 15, 20 minutes, just pinging a ball with my right foot, left foot. And he could actually ping a ball better than a lot of players could at the time. So it was great, but I put the time in. But that reaction to being selfish and understanding, where in Canada it's a wee bit light and fluffy compared to what it is in Scotland. Even when I went from Rangers to Doncaster, the difference was unbelievable in terms of the intensity. As we know, the goldfish bowl with Rangers and Celtic is incredible, absolutely incredible. Everything you did was amazing. Even somebody like me that was successful at Rangers, kids that wanted to watch my car and wash my car for me, and I'm thinking, what are you kidding me on? But it was amazing that the pressure that you were under there in Scotland, because the game means everything. The game means everything in Canada, and it's getting better. I have to say, the game is growing in North America, full stop. I mean, football is number 4 in the United States now, attendance-wise and stuff, so it's growing. The football here in Canada, it's a huge ice hockey country, as you I'm sure you're aware. So we play second fiddle to that, but the knowledge of the supporters going to the game. I mean, the Vancouver Whitecaps, I do the colour commentating with Asa Raymond, who's excellent as a commentator on CKNW. I've done it for 7 years now, the radio station, and it's fantastic. So, but we're now going to play against LAFC here in Vancouver. We've got Thomas Muller and Ryan Gold that play for us, and you've got LAFC have got Son who plays for them. Denny Boanga is another excellent centre forward, and they're talking about a sellout crowd already. They've sold over 40,000 tickets already for it, and the game's still 2 weeks away. So I would imagine our stadium's called BC Place. I would imagine that stadium. So the game is getting bigger. The exposure, media-wise, is not where I'd love it to be honest with you. Selfishly, I'd love to see it be a lot better. But with the greatest respect, a lot of the media people have never kicked a football in their life. They're hockey people that they're not comfortable maybe commentating or speaking about something that it would be like me speaking about ice hockey or basketball or baseball. I haven't a Scooby-Doo about that, but football, I can chat away with that.
I was actually going to speak about that, the coverage in Canada. I mean, I honestly can't remember the last time I seen a Canadian game on TV, or even a highlights here or anything. I think Sky done it a few years ago, but it's just there's not enough of it. Obviously, as football fans, mate, I think a lot of football fans love to watch all different types of football from all over the world and that. So it's a shame, because are they Obviously, as ice hockey, it's number one over there. But is there a lot of passion for football over there as well, though?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I have to say both. Well, the men's team now, Jesse Mars is the manager of the national team, and we have an exciting group of players as Canada has ever had, to be honest with you. And when it comes to World Cup next year, if I was playing against Canada, now I'm not going to say anything daft prediction wise, but if any team underestimates this Canadian side, they could be in for a fright, because it's attack minded. They're very aggressive. They want to play, and that's without at the moment Alphonso Davies and oh goodness me, plays for the Whitecaps, been injured for a wee while. Sam Adekube is another one who's been injured, but we've got Jonathan David playing for Juventus. You've got lads that are playing all over the world for top clubs as well. The midfield player Eustáquio plays for Porto. You've got really good football players now, and
you've got a young boy called Coney as well, haven't you?
Yes, yeah.
In the midfield,
Ismail Coney, yeah, and a very good player. I think he's playing for Watford, Davy, if I'm not mistaken.
Was he not the one at the? Did he not go to Marseille? Did he not have the fight with the manager?
I believe so. Yes, I believe so. But we've got some very, very good young players coming through as well. We now have a Canadian professional league. We've had it for I think 6-7 years now, which has given these players the sort of platform to grow and be professionals. And the exposure that they're getting is we have a TV station called One Soccer here, and the staff do a great job with coverage. And it's just getting people out to come and watch the games. Of course, the three big MLS sides, Vancouver, Toronto FC, and Montreal, that takes the bulk of the exposure, if you like. But the CPL is, we've got some very, very good coaches working in that environment now. So the future of the game, the opportunities now. We also have a women's professional league now. There are 6 teams in that, but it's in its infancy. But it's also done very well too. Some great. So the men's national team program is the best that it's been for a long, long time, and the women's national team has been very successful over the years with how well they've done in the Olympics, and a gold medal, a bronze medal, and they've been very competitive in the World Cup also.
You mentioned all these amazing Canadian players there, but you forgot about the best of the lot, and that's Alistair Johnson, mate.
I was thinking that myself. I was like, we'll eventually say his name, but
he done it deliberate, all right.
Thanks, Davey. I remember doing an interview for I think it was a Record or something back home, and he was asking me, Corey, about Alistair Johnson, and Alistair played with. I haven't met Alistair, but I hear fantastic things about him as a person, and I said I wish that he was signing for Rangers as opposed to Celtic, because I rated him. I thought he was a very, very good player, an excellent professional. You can see it's game on every time he plays for Celtic, unfortunately, but he's done very well. And unfortunately, he's going through a real difficult spell with injuries. He just can't seem to shake off this injury. Is it a hamstring? I think it is, isn't it?
He had a hamstring, and then he played against was it Braga, and then
he came back
he probably shouldn't have started that game because he came off injured quite early. But he's a great player. But back to yourself, mate. Obviously, your time at Rangers came to an end, and you moved on to Doncaster. How did you find your time down there then?
Well, it was interesting. I knew Big Terry Butcher was struggling with the cold for the week at training, so I was always involved in first team training anyway. But I was at the house, and Walter Smith phoned me, and he says, "Wee man," he says, "come into the hotel. Gaffer wants to speak to you." So I'm thinking, I've got a chance to play here. I've got to at least be in the squad, So the lads stayed at the Grosvenor Hotel in Glasgow the night before a game at that time. Graham Souness, who was my favourite player of all time, to be honest with you, he was what a difference it was with the gaffer when he came in. But so I'm in having a bite to eat with the players, and then Walter comes across and he said, "Right, gaffer wants to speak to you." So he's sitting at the table with Phil Boersma, who was a physio at the time, and Walter and the gaffer and myself chatting away. He says, "Colin, if I have to wait for the young lads to come through at the club, I'm going to be out of a job." I said, "I have to buy success here. We're going to have to shake up this this big club of ours, we're going to have to really spend money and really put Rangers on the map again. He says, and you're one of the players that I can move out to bring someone in as part of a sort of swap deal. And he said, how do you fancy going to Doncaster? And I says, where's Doncaster? That was my reply. Where's Doncaster? I'm a wee guy from Vancouver. Where's Doncaster? So he explained what was going on. And Phil Boersma had been at Doncaster Rovers and knew the manager very well. And the manager's name was Dave Cusack. He played with Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday, I think, Big Dave. So long story short, I went down and I actually loved my time at Doncaster Rovers. And Big Dave, the manager, asked, he said, when are there any other players that you would bring down? I said, Stuart Beattie. I would definitely bring Stuart Beattie down from Rangers as well, a young centre-back, played with me in the reserves all the time and was, you could see there was a different level of player to come in. And Big Stuart came down and the two of us, we did really well for Doncaster. They made me captain right away. And Big Stuart came in, played centre-back, and it was great. It was a really good team. Big Brian Dean that used to play for us, Mark Rankin, there was Andy Rhodes, who was a goalkeeper as well. So we had really competitive side. So loved my time. And then Big Dave got sacked, and it was actually Dave Mackay came in with Joe Kinnear, took over from them, and then I got released. But I loved the time in Doncaster. Played against Arsenal in a couple of games as well in the cup. A really good experience. And what it did, it actually kind of, it sounds daft to say it, but it served my apprenticeship as a first team player, because I as I said earlier, I only played 7 first team games for Rangers, but the reserves were great. I loved it. But it wasn't first team football. I wanted to play. And going back to when Graham Souness spoke to me, he said, I knew at that time that my time was up. There was no point in me staying at Rangers. I wanted to play football. And I had already lived my dream there. It was now time to move on and see what I could do. So my wife Maria and I went down to Doncaster, and that's really what kick-started the rest of my footballing time.
In between Rangers and Doncaster, you played in the 1986 World Cup. How was it? And you were the first. Was it the only Canadian side to reach the World Cup at that point?
Yeah, so we were. It's a horrible story to tell, Corey, because it could only happen to me. I never played in any of the qualifiers at the time to get to Mexico '86, but I was brought in and I played in a lot of friendlies. I played against Wales. I played against Mexico. There was another friendly as well, and then the lads played against England here in Vancouver before they went to Mexico. And Tony Waiters was the manager of the team. Tony did a great job for Canada. He decided that he would only take 18 players to Mexico. And you could imagine who was one of the 4 that was left behind in Vancouver. So I'm actually staying in Vancouver, training with some young lads, with Alan Errington, the coach I referred to earlier on, in Vancouver. And I'm actually sitting in the pub watching Canada versus Russia or France in the first game with my dad, the Wheelhouse pub in Vancouver. And I'm thinking, goodness me. And Tony later recognised that he had made a mistake. I said, because, I said to him, when Tony told me that I was being left behind in Vancouver, he said he didn't want too much disharmony in the group. And I said, Tony, I says, this is Canada you're talking about. This is not Holland or Italy or Germany or Spain, or where they've got big time Charlies all over the place. This is Canada. We've got postmen. We've got all sorts of things that are part of the group here. And anyway, but he had made his decision. I respected that. I said, if I get the call, I'll be desperate to come in and help out. So I get embarrassed to say I was in the Mexico '86 World Cup squad, but I was sitting in a pub watching Canada play during the World Cup, which was disappointing. But after that, then I became a much more regular with the national team.
Brilliant, mate. You ended up playing for Hamilton Accies here, mate. That's where I am at the moment in Hamilton. Davey actually grew up in Hamilton. So how was your time there, pal?
Loved it. Absolutely loved my time with the Accies. I played over 200 games for Hamilton. The biggest chunk of my career was with the Accies. Some of the lads, some of the characters, some of the players, some of the teams that we had, during those times. John Lammy signed me from Doncaster. What a character John was as well. Great, him and Big Jerry Collins. You had polar opposites again. One was blue and one was green, and it was great. It was just a really good environment. We were in the Premier League. We got relegated, but then we were always pushing for promotion out of the First Division. The First Division was such a difficult league, but great players: Alan Ferguson, Paul McDonald, Jim Weir. Goodness me, Bobby Russell. Colin Harris. You had the list goes on and on. It was never a chore to come in and play for the Ackies. And what disappointed me, I guess, the most was how good the team was playing, and the majority of the supporters were either going to watch Rangers or going to watch Celtic. And we had
Celtic now.
Yeah, and it's that's. But it was frustrating, David, because we had good teams, and Jim Dempsey took over, and then we had Billy McLaren alongside Willie McLean, and then Ian Munro came in, and but I love my time with Hamilton. I had a chance to move a few times during my career with Hamilton. One of them was actually with Wrexham. I played with Brian Flynn, who played for Wales and also played with me at Doncaster. He became the Wrexham manager. Ian Munro said, right, wee Flinny wants you to go down to Wrexham, train for a weekend. And I did, and we shook hands on a deal. And the transfer fee was going to be £75,000 at that time. And there was no cell phones or anything like that at that moment. I drove up from Wrexham thinking, wow, I'm actually going to make some money out of the game here. I'm going to change things a wee bit here. Went into training at Hamilton the next morning. Ian Munro pulled me into the room and said, listen, wee man, sorry, the deal is off. Wrexham were going to pay £40,000 up front and then £1,000 a game for 35 games. And Hamilton turned that down. And then I eventually get sold to St Johnstone for 35 grand. So it was disappointing. It happened a few times to me. It happened to when I could have got a move to Blackburn Rovers as well. But Doncaster wanted 100 grand and Blackburn offered 75 grand. So it happened a few times, but it is what it is. But I love my time. We won two B&Q Cup finals with the Ackies as well. Two great nights. One was at Fir Park. I'm trying to remember where the other game was. Because we didn't have a stadium at the time, if I recall. But it was great. It was terrific times. I became the manager of the club, and if I look back now, I really wish that I had served an apprenticeship as an assistant manager before I took the job. And I'm a member of the North American Scottish Coaches Association. It's fantastic. Over 300 coaches with Scottish backgrounds in it, and we had David Martindale on as a guest speaker a couple of weeks ago, and he gave the same advice to the young coaches that were on the call at that time, saying serve your time as an apprentice. It's pay your dues as an assistant, get to know what was going on. But I was playing for Ayr United one Saturday. The following Saturday, I was the Ackies manager at 33 years of age, which was amazing. All of a sudden, all my gear's being left out for me. Now I'm the one that's having to organise getting it washed and getting it put out. So a big responsibility. But it was a shame we got relegated that season. But what a learning experience it was for a 33-year-old. There was myself and Billy Davies were the two youngest managers, I think, in Scotland at the time. He was at Motherwell, Billy, and I was at the Ackies. But an incredible experience.
When you look back over your 400 plus professional appearances, what periods of your career really shaped your mentality, do you think?
Certainly my times with the national teams, Corey, were what a privilege it was, because I got asked this question the other day: what was it like to play for Canada, and how did you feel? And I said, well, being brought up in Scotland for 10 years and obviously being a big part of Scottish football, or having a big part in Scottish football for so many years, you get to understand what it means to wear the Scottish jersey. And I took that mentality into how I played for Canada, how much pride it was. I mean, the country has been phenomenal for my family. My mum and dad, wouldn't have had what they had they stayed in Scotland. My brothers, and my brother who's back in Scotland. My two sisters live here. We've got I've got a son, Ryan, and my daughter Sarah. Now I'm a grandfather as well. Just a couple of months ago to young Emmett, which is fantastic, and Sarah and Carson. But
Congratulations!
Congrats, and congrats.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had the opportunities had we stayed in Scotland that we've had in Canada. Canada has been terrific for us. So the pride that I took to wear for the jersey was as if I was playing back in Scotland in a league game. It didn't matter who the opposition were. It didn't, you played against some phenomenal clubs, countries. Some great jerseys downstairs as well. Lothar Matthäus springs to mind as when we played Germany and that. So it was a real privilege. 61 appearances. I had 38 of those as a captain of the national team. Playing against Brazil in Edmonton, 53,000, drawn one each with them just before they won the World Cup in the States. So it was all part of it, but I never abused being a player of that. It was just a privilege, and the laughs and the giggles. I've always had hopefully a sense of humour and been able to laugh at myself as well. I think that's really, really important. But staying humble is critical. Was
there any part of you that maybe had, maybe thought about playing for Scotland instead of Canada at one point?
It happened so quickly, Jamie. The environment I was in Canada was so good. I never got approached, obviously. I mean, you're going back a long time here now. Maybe the internet and things like that would have had to have been a phone call probably at that time before you could get in touch with someone. The interest from the development that I was putting in here, Canada-wise, was terrific. As I said, the bulk of the players came from British Columbia, and I was now moving through that system and becoming better known. So it just seemed a natural progression to go and play for Canada. And as I said earlier, taking our Canadian citizenship in 1982 was just the next step in that. The CSA, Canadian Soccer Association, helped with that, so it got pushed along a wee bit. So that was what it was. And you never lose your love for Scotland, that's for sure. There's no question in my mind about that. I still watch as many games as I can. Even when I was back home, I would still go and watch Scotland play as often as I could as well. So, you can't take it out of us, that's for sure.
We got a wee comment here for John Marshall saying he met you in Vegas 10 years ago. Don't be expanding on that though, John. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Exactly.
Remember that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Hi, John.
How do you feel with the current Scotland setup? Do you feel that Steve Clarke's the right person, or should he move on?
Well, what a question. The time will tell, Corey, but he's done a good job for Scotland. I think it's maybe the best Scottish squad we've had for a long time as well. I'd love to see some more younger lads getting a chance. I'd like to see a wee bit more rotation, but when you become a manager, guys, it's no easy. It's no easy to even David Martindale was saying the other day to us that giving young guys a chance in the Scottish Premier League is becoming more and more difficult because the managers are under pressure to win. And it's disappointing because we need the young guys to get a chance. We need them to do it. It's so important. But there have been times watching it, I'm thinking, well, when's he going to bring the young boy Miller on? And when's he going to give this one a chance? When's he going to do that? And it's waited till later on. But I think when you look over the piece, for the most part, he's done a really good job, Steve. I think he's, who am I to criticise Steve Clarke? But I think that he's got the fans behind him in terms of in this next couple of games that Hampden, I'm sure, will be bouncing to see if we can get across the line there, because the World Cup will be amazing in Canada and the States and Mexico next year. But it's been frustrating. There's been times I have been, as a supporter, I've been frustrated that I've not seen more substitutions or given young guys or somebody else a chance to play.
You touched upon it a wee bit. We spoke about it a wee bit in the podcast, just there is a grassroots problem with Scotland in general. It feels like, David will agree with me, it's just like it's too expensive for even kids just to even kick a ball about, because you're talking a good, how much is it roughly, Davey, for a pitch?
Well, I don't know, but I know that they used to get a certain rate if you were like the coach a football team and that, but now they're all out the window and you pay a lot more than what you used to.
So it's that aspect
And
as
then
well. I feel.
when you play
And every-
fives or sevens, it's usually a five or a heat on it. Ten or a
and
heat. to play.
everywhere you go, all young guys at one time, and we were all kicking the ball about everywhere.
Aye.
Colin, you don't see any kids playing football anymore. Everywhere is just no ball games, and you don't see a group of lads walking down the street with a football anymore and kicking it about. It's a shame.
Yeah, and I don't understand that mentality. I have to say, the street football is where we all played, and it helped us become football players. There wasn't a player in Scotland we didn't know. I'm going to be him today. I'm going to be him today. That and it's disappointing to hear that. It really is, because I remember even at Hamilton when I took over from Sandy Clark, we had no youth program at the time. So myself and Ali Dawson actually started, and that was nothing against Sandy, by the way. It was just how things were at the time. It was a financial thing as well, I believe. But the Hamilton Palace had just opened up with all the wee boxes and things like that. So Ali and I actually run an academy, believe it or not, on a Thursday night. And we had upwards of 40 boys, I'm sure, that were in those boxes. I was taking one of the sessions and Ali Dawson was taking the other one. And there was parents who were saying, that's the manager of the Ackies there, that's the assistant manager there, taking these training. And the boys loved it, absolutely loved it. But we had to start somewhere. We had to start somewhere, but that was the initial start of the. I'm not taking any credit for the guys that came through the academy by any means, but that was where we started. Was on a Thursday night at Hamilton Palace, both Ali and I, because the kids, we didn't want them all to go to Rangers and Celtic and things like that. We wanted to try and keep the best players that we could in our place, and you could only do that if it was well organised and structured, and we tried to do that, as I said.
Aye, well, Hamilton are one of the teams this year that's released all their youth. I don't know if they've done away with the academy.
Wow. It's disappointing. The game here, yes, it's still the cheapest game to play, but I'll tell you what, it's not cheap to play. It's expensive. When you're talking ice hockey, American football, you're buying pads and crash helmets and all these sort of things, ice skates. Some of the parents I speak to, they're paying fortunes to play these sports. And football now is an expensive sport to play in North America for sure.
I know that you obviously we've spoken about it, mate. You're a big Rangers fan. You played for the club and that. We'll speak about Rangers for a few minutes before we let you go. Obviously, did you watch the game the other day?
Oh, sorry, there's something wrong with it.
Obviously, we done a podcast, and obviously there was a lot to dissect in that one, but we'll not go through every incident, mate. But what do you make like Danny Rose, and since he's come in, Rangers look a lot stronger in my opinion, especially in the second half.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do. Sometimes when you play against 10 men, the troops rally, if you like, and that's exactly what Rangers did in the second half. They were first to things. They showed a wee bit of hunger. Celtic were miles ahead in the first half, and the sending off. Yeah, for me, it's a red card. I don't think Asgard really knows he's there. He just turns and has a swipe at it, but nevertheless it's a violent conduct, so it's a red card. I thought at least it was an entertaining Old Firm game, because the one at Ibrox was poor. Wasn't a great game. When I compare the two teams now to the teams of old, I look at Tommy Burnside with God rest him. Tommy, you're like this one, Corey. Tommy, I had a conversation with Tommy Burns one day with another Celtic supporter. He was he was a general manager of Coca-Cola in East Kilbride. Big Jim Duddy, his name was. Big Celtic daft he was. And when I left Hamilton, I became the grassroots manager of Coca-Cola for about 6 weeks in East Kilbride, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And Tommy Burns was one of our guests one day. And he said, wee man, he says, you're not going to believe this. He says, but you were actually on our list of possibilities of signing. He said, and then we did a wee bit of research and we realised that was never going to happen. But it's going to sound crazy, but the streaming feed that I had for Sunday's game, I missed at least a third of the game, and I wasn't surprised that Celtic kicked on a wee bit in the extra time period. But we spoke about refereeing as well earlier on. I think, Jamie, when I think who would want to be a referee in an Old Firm game anyway? I mean, you've got absolutely no chance. But I genuinely think that if you did that in the street with Butland, what happened with Butland there, you get arrested for that. You know what I mean?
Corey, you need to tell that to.
I think it's a sending off. I think he knew what he was doing, and I think actually Jack Butland's quite lucky that the studs we've done a bit of damage with studs on it anyway. But if I'd caught him properly, it would have been for me. It could have been a real bad injury. But at least from nothing else, at least I thought as an advertisement worldwide for the game and for the Old Firm. It was an entertaining game. It had a wee bit of everything in it, and when you get, I have to say, I miss the Old Firm game when Celtic have got that end at Ibrox, and I miss it when we've got that corner up at Celtic Park. I don't think it's a good look for the Scottish game. I'd love to see the supporters back in the stadium, and because it's making it the spectacle that it is. The supporters, there's wrong sides to it. We can all debate that for sure, but the spectacle of the Old Firm, you saw that on Sunday, where you see half of it red, white, and blue, and you see it half white, half green and white, and I just think it's a great advertisement for the game.
Definitely.
Yeah, mate. Exactly. Totally agree with that. Colin, thanks very much for your time. We've just got a couple more things that we do end every podcast, mate. We'll let you go. We're a very busy man. Okay. So, here's a trivia question for you, mate. Can you name the 3 players that you played alongside the most in your career?
The 3 players that I enjoyed playing, is that what you said?
No, the 3 players that you played alongside the most appearances.
Well, I'd say Jim Weir for sure at Hamilton.
No, he's not out.
Interesting.
All Canada.
Oh, and Canadian players.
Yeah.
I'd say Randy Samuel.
Yep, he's second. 45. Well, he's actually tied with the number 1 as well, but 45 times alongside him.
Alex Bunbury.
He's third, 39 games. So, one more. Number 1.
I wonder if it's Craig Forrest.
Nope, he's 6th.
It must have made quite an impression then, if I can remember.
Well, it was the Canadian national team you played alongside him the most with.
Striker on the other end of the pitch. That
definitely rules me out there. I didn't. There was Pesca Salido. There was Dale.
Did you say striker there, Corey?
Oh, I imagine it would be a striker if it didn't leave an impression. There's another end of the pitch. No striker.
No striker.
Lyndon Hooper.
He's 5th. 35 games alongside him.
Nick Dasovic.
You can down the list here, 7th.
You'll no thank me for that, Nick.
He was a good player, wasn't he? He played with St Johnstone.
St Johnstone, he was good.
Great career, Big Nick. Great career. St Johnstone legend. Wow. Frank, I said Frank Yallop, didn't I?
No, you did not, mate. It's him.
Is
Frank
it?
Yallop.
Brilliant. Yes, I should.
Frank Yallop, Randy Samuel, and Alex Bunbury.
Wow, great stuff. I've got a hump on my back carrying Yallop. What a player.
Last question, mate, before we let you go, is 5-a-side team, you're the coach, and you've got 5 players who you played alongside the most. But no, you've 5 players who you would put in your 5-a-side team of the players you played alongside. Who are you putting in your 5-a-side team?
Wow. Davy Cooper's got to be in there for sure. Let me see. Terry Butcher, just for his leadership and what he was like to play alongside, even in training, magnificent. I'm going to say Bruce Wilson was the Canadian lad that I mentioned earlier on. What's that? 3 players I'll give you there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
3. I guess we need a goalkeeper, don't we?
He can be a player as well.
Okay.
Follow attack.
Follow attack, aye. Well, I did play with Graham Souness, so I'm gonna say Graham there for sure. Let's see. One more, is it? One more?
One more.
Just one more.
Jimmy Nicholl.
Fair enough. Nah.
That's a right staunch team, that one, isn't it, man?
Nah,
Jeez,
I'm
Off
liking
it,
that.
bro.
He can do the commentating, Coisty.
Colin, thank you very, very much for your time, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I know you're a very busy man. You're in Vancouver at the moment. All the best for the future, pal. Thanks very much for everything.
Yeah,
Cheers, mate.
on the show, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank
No
you.
bother, mate.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.